Good day to you. And today, the important subject of headset bearings. Headset bearings are a really neglected part of the bike, a bit like bottom brackets and wheel bearings, but very much important to how the bike feels. This particular bearing set here is a set that's taken out of one of my bikes, and the bottom one is quite badly worn. So I'm replacing it with a spare headset bearing that I have. Now, I do this probably about once a year, maybe twice a year if the bike's been ridden a lot in rain. And generally speaking, just undo the stem, drop the fork out, and you can get to the bearings and check them. Now, if the bearings, when you rotate them, feel a bit gritty, like they've got sand or dirt in them, it's usually time to replace. But sometimes they can just feel or look a bit neglected because you haven't had a re-grease, or basically there's been dirt and dust getting it, especially the bottom one. That's where all the road salt and stuff gets flicked up from the front wheels, so that can actually get filthy. So this is worthwhile doing, and it doesn't take very long to do it as well. Just undo the stem bolts, undo the top new staff angle nuts, release the steerer tube. What I do is basically put a Velcro strap around the front wheel and the bottom, the down tube, and you can hold it in place so you can get to the top one easily without the front dropping out. And generally speaking, if you then undo the Velcro strap, or even a pair of a belt basically for your pants, you can undo the buckle and drop the wheel slightly so it doesn't drop out, and you can get to the headset bearing in situ. You don't have to take the fork out and have everything drop away, but I generally speaking just take the fork out. It's a lot easier for me. Now, when you take the fork out, check the bottom of the bearing for any water or dirt, clean it all off. Check the bearing. If it's in any way gritty, probably time to order another one, or a whole headset replacement, but generally I find that the bottom one goes first. Once you've done that, basically take the bearings out, slide them down, clean them up, apply some decent grease. The more water repellent it is, all grease is pretty much water repellent anyway, the better. Check the seals just in case there's any tears on them, especially the top part as well, because sometimes the steerer can damage the seal around the top. That's the actual cap that fits on top of the bearing, basically, to press it down. So change that, or have a good look at that. Put loads and loads of grease on it. It doesn't matter if you overdo the grease on the bearings, it's all good, because generally speaking, the next time you come to service it, all your dirt and grit that gets caught up in your bearing will basically just stay in the grease, and you can wipe the grease off and clean it off, and it will also stop the ingress of water into the bearing if you do this regularly as well. It just makes them last a little bit longer, really. To be honest with you, if the headset bearings aren't decent, if you're the kind of person that takes their hands off the bars whilst they're riding, you'll notice that the bike actually handles and self-centers a lot better if the bearings are free flowing. If it happens to lock in certain positions, then the chances are your bearings are on the way out and probably need treatment. As I said with this kind of thing before, a lot of people neglect this part of bike care. I can't count the amount of times I've had bikes in where the bottom bracket bearings are gone, the wheel bearings are gone, the headset bearings are gone, and they're all the things that make the bike feel good, basically, if you replace those. Wheel set bearings are quite easy to check. Literally, if you put them on a stand like this and rotate them and hold your hand just above where the quick release bolts in, also, if the bearings are rough, you can usually feel it through the metal. It'll have a roughness to it that you can feel through, basically where the quick release or through axle goes through. Just touch it as the wheel's spinning, you can feel if the bearings are good. The back one's a little bit more complex because of the free wheel bearing, but generally speaking, you can feel if the wheel bearings are gone. Sometimes you have to take the back wheel off and check the actual free hub for bearing wear. But bearings are really, really important to keep in good condition, I think. Here you can see I'm reassembling the headset. I've I have a habit of leaving out washers sometimes on something and have to go back to it, but that's a different point. But you want the staff angle nut done up, probably about 2 to 3 pound-feet, basically, just enough to stop it moving backwards and forwards, or the headset bearing to move back and forwards. What I do to make sure that I've got the bearing preloaded correctly is once I've reassembled the stem bolts tight enough so it doesn't move from side to side so much, but you can move the headset up or move the stem up and down. Basically, put it on the floor with the wheel back in it, put the front brake on, and try and move the bike backwards and forwards with your hand on the top cap bearing. Basically, if the bearing moves front to rear as you're doing that with the brake on, it's too loose. Tighten up a little bit more, check again, move it backwards and forwards with the front brake on. If it carries on doing that, it needs to be a little bit tighter, and get it so there's no movement when you've got the brake on. Once you've sorted that out and there's no movement on the top cap that fits underneath the stem and the head tube, you've got the preload right. Then you tighten the stem bolts up, make sure the wheel's straight, because that's really irritating. And once you've done that, that's it. You've preloaded your bearings properly. Basically, you've not overdone them, and you should have some nice free-flowing side-to-side handlebars that when you lift the bike off the stand will guarantee that the handlebars smack the top tube, so be careful of that. You don't want that. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video. It's just a quickie this time for this particular one, but it's a well worthwhile job to do. If you do it once a year, it'll last for ages, basically. Thanks. Don't forget to click like or subscribe if you do. Ta. Bye.